I want to ask you about Russia before we watch the third clip that were selected, because obviously that is something that's on people's minds when they hear about what you did and where you are, and you almost can't have any kind of discussion about politics these days without mentioning Russia. Russia is the place where you have now lived for 9 years, since 2013. It is a place that has provided you essentially effective asylum, and yet you often say that that was not a place that you chose to be in. You were essentially forced to be there. How is it that you ended up in Russia, and why are you still there now?
Yeah, so if you go back and you look at the contemporaneous reporting, this is all very well documented. But basically, I wasn't supposed to stay in Russia. It was a transit route, or a transit stop en route to Latin America, where because of the openness that South America had showed for whistleblowers in the past, particularly in the case of Julian Assange, where they had said, even though he's being hunted and desperately persecuted, by the United States and the UK and Sweden, he would be welcome to go there. And I had talked to a lot of lawyers at this point, just in a few days, right? We had to make decisions very quickly because, like you see in the clip, there was a burning fuse where we knew my identity was going to be revealed, and it was very likely I would no longer be able to travel onwards. So immediately we went, all right, I have to get out to a safe place of asylum. That's going to be Latin America. We had contacts, we had insurances. This would probably be our best bet. I had originally hoped for Europe, but every diplomat that we talked to in Europe basically said this is not going to work. Like, they're going to cave. The government's not going to back you, or we'll try, but like no promises. And it was just very clear from the reporting that everybody in the world knew the United States had raised a gigantic hammer. Where, like, Brazil, Ecuador, Venezuela, Bolivia, that all looked like they were positive possibilities. They had the Caracas Convention, or I can't remember which one it is, that was on non-refoulement. Basically, they didn't extradite people, and they mutually respected that, so there would be free movement. And so I had a flight that was laid out. The tickets had been seen by journalists. Journalists were on the plane. We were supposed to go Hong Kong to Russia, Russia, Cuba to the final destination in Latin America. And it was there were forks. There were a couple different ones that I could go to based on route. Did we see any response from the U.S. that was going to stop going to one or the other? But as soon as I left China, it was leaked. And the U.S. government, while I'm in the air with no communications, headed to Russia, the U.S. threw a whole bunch of sort of emergency press conferences and was like, stop him, his passport is canceled, exactly the kind of thing that we suspected would happen. And so I land in Russia, and the border guards say, your passport doesn't work. And I'm like, no, I don't believe this. And I recount the story in my book in great detail. But we basically got Wi-Fi in the business lounge and the terminal. And I was like, oh, God, they really have done it. So then becomes a long period when I'm actually trying quite hard not to stay in Russia. And if you look back at this period, this is what none of these critics say. I spent 40 days trapped in an airport transit lounge where I applied for asylum in, I think, 21 different countries. And these are documented. There are public responses from the different countries' representatives, where they all, in places that you would expect to stand up for human rights here and whistleblower protection, places like France, places like Germany. We even went to Italy. Iceland was a big possibility, where you had one of two responses. For the big countries, they went, basically, we won't do this. We won't agree to this because we're afraid of the U.S. response politically, and we just don't want to get engaged in that. If you manage to get here You can apply, no promises, but you don't have a passport. So, I guess there's nothing that can be done. Good luck with your life. And then the small countries that were actually willing to say, we would do this, but we don't believe we can actually protect you because of the U.S. practice of extraordinary rendition, which is kidnapping. They just send a black bag team and they don't go to the courts or anything. They just snatch somebody up. They put them in the U.S. Court system or prison ship or whatever. And U.S. courts have held that this is not a problem, that they can do this. Even though, that's a whole nother story. And so now, while all of this is happening, we had the Evo Morales incident that you referred to earlier, where Bolivia, which had been one of these countries that had telegraphed that they would be sort of open to granting me asylum, had their president attend an energy conference in Russia. And they had basically, heard a rumor or something like that, that I was going to be flying back on the presidential plane. And even though the president of the United States on camera, then Barack Obama, said, I'm not going to be scrambling jets to get some 29-year-old hacker, like literally a week or two earlier, they closed the entire airspace of Europe, like a wall, to prevent this plane from transiting. And it was a smaller plane because it's a smaller country, so it had to stop to refuel. It lands in Austria in the airport. And the U.S. ambassador is there to greet it, and they won't let the plane take off again, even though this is a president of a sovereign country, until the U.S. ambassador gets walked through it and says, oh, no, there's no guy on here. Thanks for helping. You can go now. And that was the moment when it became clear to everyone, including myself, that even if I got a promise of asylum from Germany or France, it wouldn't be safe for me to travel there, because you've got to travel over a lot of vassal states on the air path to get there. That would just close the airspace. And so that point, I was out of options. I applied for asylum in Russia. I was granted it. And actually, I've been left alone quite remarkably since then, which is really all that I could ask for, given the circumstances.
I remember the week after that happened with Evo Morales, I went to the Russian consulate in Rio de Janeiro to get my visa to visit you with Laura. We ended up filming the last scene from Citizen 4 there, but it was the first time I was able to see you since Hong Kong. And the Russian consul recognized my name from the application and came out and said to me, look, we understand why the U.S. government wants to arrest Snowden. We don't support what he did. We understand why governments need to punish people who leak their secrets. But please explain to me why they are so insane. Like, this thing they did to Evo Morales' plane is so far outside of, they had no idea that you were even on the plane. It was like a hunch or like a suspicion, and they brought down his plane for that reason alone. It was very dangerous what they did. And even the Russians were shocked at just like the extremity of that conduct. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update. Catch our full shows for free, live weekdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on Rumble, and join our locals community at greenwald.locals.com for all of my written journalism, exclusive after-show Q&As, and more.